I've been with the company for 6 years. I was hired as a data verification specialist, which is a job title that conveys nothing useful, and the honest description is this. I sit at a terminal, I open flagged items, I read them, and I mark them either resolved or escalating. In 6 years, I have marked 23,417 items resolved. I have never marked anything escalating. I want to be clear that this is not an oversight. I reviewed every item I resolved. I applied the verification protocols. The protocols described a set of conditions that would qualify an item for escalation, and none of the items I reviewed met those conditions, which is why I marked them resolved, and that is a defensible answer, and I have given it to myself many times. The problem is that the protocols describe the escalation conditions in terms of deviation from baseline. Large deviation from baseline, escalate. Small deviation, resolve. The protocols do not define what large means. They do not define baseline. The protocols assume you already know what baseline looks like, which is the kind of assumption that is easy to overlook when you are new to a job and eager to do it correctly, and surrounded by the implication that these things are understood. After 6 years, I still do not know what baseline looks like. I know what the items look like. They are data outputs from monitoring systems. The clients and their purposes are not disclosed to verification staff, which was noted in the onboarding documentation as a standard data security measure. The items contain numerical readings, pattern indicators, variance flags. Some are environmental data of some kind, readings with units I've learned to recognize, parts per million, population density indexing, behavioral cluster coefficients. Some are what I've come to think of as movement data, flow patterns, frequency changes, something the labeling field calls migration indicators. The flags are raised automatically when the numbers exceed a threshold I don't set. I review them and determine whether the deviation is within what I've inferred to be acceptable. I have been inferring acceptable for 6 years. 6 months ago, I started keeping a second log. Not part of any protocol, a personal one, a text file on a local drive, not uploaded anywhere. I began noting the items I found hardest to resolve. The ones where the deviation was large but not obviously large, the ones where I felt the particular friction of deciding. I went back and looked for my earliest reviews and noted those too, trying to see whether my thresholds had shifted over time. They had. In year 1, my friction items were different from my friction items in year 5. What I'd found easy to resolve in year 1, I sometimes paused it longer now. What had seemed clearly within range had shifted towards something I couldn't name, not dangerous, not flagged in any way I could point to, but different. As if the thing I was comparing the items against had moved without my noticing, and I had been tracking a baseline that had been quietly adjusting itself the whole time. I spent a week looking for documentation on what escalation produces. What happens when a verification specialist marks something escalating? I searched internal directories, the company intranet, the onboarding materials I'd mostly forgotten. I found a process flow diagram that said escalating to review tier 2 and nothing else. I could not find a description of what review tier 2 was, or who staffed it, or what it did with the items it received. On a Tuesday morning in March, I opened an item. Migration indicators for a regional cluster. Deviation value, 4.7 on a scale whose maximum I've never been told. I looked at it for 45 minutes. I closed it and quickly I reopened it. I sat with it for another 20. I marked it escalating. I submitted the form. The system processed it. The confirmation screen read, "Submission received. Item transferred to queue." I refreshed the queue. The item was gone. Everything in the queue was gone. Not just the item I'd escalated, the full queue, the 11 other items I'd been planning to review that morning, all cleared. I checked my resolution history. The 11 items showed resolved with my verification code, timestamped 3 minutes before I'd submitted the escalation. I had not resolved those items. I had not opened them. I filed an error report with the internal help desk. I was precise and factual. I included the timestamps. The response came in 2 hours. It said the queue behavior was a known system characteristic in certain workflow states, and that my concern had been noted, and no further action was required. That was 4 months ago. Since then, the queue has cleared once more briefly, on a morning when I arrived late and found it empty. I don't know if I triggered it by arriving late. I don't know if the connection is real. I went back through my 6 years of resolution logs, looking for the item I almost escalated in year 3. I know it exists because I remember it, a cluster of population density indicators, a distribution pattern I'd stared at for an hour, something that looked like a question if you held it a certain way. I remember deciding it was within range and marking it resolved. I remember feeling, for about a day afterward, that I should go back and look again. I can't find it. The logs show my resolution codes for every item I processed, but the item metadata doesn't display in the search results, only the code and the timestamp. I have 23,417 timestamps and no way to retrieve what they resolved. I don't know if escalating would have been better. I've thought about it for 4 months, and I genuinely don't know. Review Tier 2 is unknown to me. What it does with items is unknown. Whether the outcome of escalating is better or worse than the outcome of resolving is something I cannot determine because I have only ever resolved. I open the queue every morning. I review the flags. I apply the thresholds I've developed over 6 years of inferring what baseline looks like. I mark things resolved. I don't know what I'm resolving. I don't know if I ever did.